I've retrieved the famous, or should that be infamous, CD32 controller, which seems to be rattling. I'm sure it can be fine. One of them's got dogs, the other's got a tiny, tiny little Raquel Welsh. Keep confusing those two. No point putting off the inevitable. Hello, welcome to the Mammoth Tech Show. I'm Jeff, and today we'll be doing part 3 of my very infrequent Does My Amiga Still Work series. We've done my Amiga 1200 and the CDTV. Now it's time for the Amiga CD32. But first, what is the Amiga CD32? Well, it's an intriguing little console from the 1990s. Launched in late 1993, the Amiga CD32 can be thought of as a CD-based Amiga 1200. Marketed as the world's first 32-bit CD-based console, its fate was sealed in the spring of the following year with the bankruptcy of Commodore. Even without this, its time in the sun would probably have been brief, with Sega Saturn and Sony's PlayStation launching in Japan later in '94 and worldwide in '95. Those consoles' emphasis on 3D polygon pushing power was something that the Commodore machine just would not have been able to keep up with. But where did I get my CD32? Well, I picked it up, I believe it was from a little electrical retailer that isn't around anymore called Rumbelows. They had a sale shelf, and on it was this chap and an Atari Jaguar, and they had both for £100. So I could have ended up with an Atari Jaguar, but I chose the CD32. Cosmetically, he's in pretty good shape. He's basically been sitting up in a loft for a couple of decades and really hasn't had any damp or anything like that. Capacitors could be an issue. We could switch this on as a pop and some rather nasty magic blue smoke emits, and that's that. Or it might just work, but from the outside at least it's looking okay. So there's no point putting off the inevitable. Let's have a go. First things first, let's get this TV switched on. Right, that's the TV switched on. No point putting off the inevitable. Does this work? Contact. We have a light. Ooh. Is this looking good? Is this looking good? No immediate pop, no immediate bang. Yes. Quite loud. Never mind. That is working brilliantly. We got the noise from the disk drive, so hopefully the disk drive is working as well. We have this rather nice boot screen showing off the Amiga's AGA chipset with that hopeful noise from the disk drive. Let's see if that's working. Just for testing, we have this compilation disc here. As you may be able to see, this is actually a CDTV disc, but it does work. All the CDTV stuff works. I believe all of it works. Pretty much all of it works. The same sort of backwards compatibility you'd have between a 1200 and a 500 you get between this and the CDTV. So let's see if the disk drive works. Seeking noises. Oh, it was basically just loading Workbench. Right, okay, that's a thing. So yeah, that's working fine. Yes, it took a while because it was basically just loading Workbench. Right, Workbench being the Amiga's operating system. And yeah, we don't have anything hooked up to this, but that proves that not only does this work, but the disk drive works. I think we should try out a few CD32 titles. Let's go exploring the CD32's catalogue. I've retrieved the famous, or should that be infamous, CD32 controller. Which seems to be rattling. I'm sure it'll be fine. And I also have a selection of games which we can have a go at. So let's start off. First off, we have the Labyrinth of Time. And although this does say CD32 on the top of the box, it is actually, well, I guess what we would call now cross-generational. It does work on the CDTV, CD32, and even a ordinary Amiga 500 if you'd plug the A570 CD-ROM drive. This is very much a Myst-like game where there are pre-rendered images and you go from place to place and that's represented by another pre-rendered image. At the time I'd never actually played Myst, so I couldn't make any comparisons, but I do remember having a lot of fun with this game. It's got, if I recall correctly, a very nice atmospheric soundtrack going along in the background, and the novelty of the pre-rendered backgrounds at the time was enough to make it a good fun experience. And strangely enough, played this mostly on the CDTV. Let's have a look inside. We have a nice instruction manual, nice photograph of the creators. Here we go. Here we've got the backstory done by text. Ooh, a little bit of animation there. Yay! This would definitely have been more atmospheric with some voiceover work in a subway car facing north. So in a lot of ways this is kind of like the old school text adventures, but instead of text description you had nice rendered artwork. There we go. It helps if you have the controller in the right port. That's odd. Having the controller in the other port, you could still do the buttons, but not the mouse pointer. So, yeah. And there you get the idea. Explore around, pick things up, use things, kind of basic, and basically a maze as they're suggested with the Labyrinth of Time name. But yeah, it was good fun at the time. Let's try something else. Up next we have something fairly notorious, Microcosm. The first time I saw this game was as a rolling demo for the CDTV, along with another game called PlanetSide and several intro sequences from previous Psygnosis titles. This made for an absolutely stunning showreel at the time. Microcosm never made it onto the CDTV, and PlanetSide, an amazing looking air combat game, sadly never made it out at all. Microcosm, very much a inner space, incredible journey. Is it Incredible Journey or a Fantastic Journey? One of them's got dogs, the other's got a tiny, tiny little Raquel Welch. Keep confusing those two. Anyway, this is your classic get miniaturized and get injected into someone story. And yeah, this doesn't have the greatest gameplay, really. It is a little bit like a much earlier game called Firefox that used laser discs to show footage, flying footage from the movie with graphics over the top, and you had to shoot down things with the nice video playing in the background. And it's a similar sort of deal with this one. Signosis always good with the packaging. Let's have a go. Ed 209, slightly lumpy second cousin.
Say hello to the good doctor. Nobody else was supposed to be here. Security could easily have noticed them without my verification.
I think security noticed them. Here we are, here game. And yeah, it's video with sort of kind of Space Harrier like. I feel like the whole idea of the miniaturized sub and everything like that, it's a nice idea, but it doesn't exactly lend itself to massively interesting in visuals. You know, it's the inside of a vein. All of it will be the inside of some vein or another. I'm sure that noise is fine. Okay, so maybe not so fun. And that was Microcosm. Amazingly enough, not a smash hit. Can't imagine why. Bit of a fun one next. Super Methane Brothers, which is basically like a bubbles bobble alike. And yeah, it's quite a fun one. This is very much your Amiga style packaging. I'm not sure exactly how much enhancement there was for the CD32 version. Obviously those previous games, not possible on floppy disks. This one, yeah. I mean, it is entirely possible that it isn't even an AGA game. It could just be something that would run perfectly happily on an Amiga 500. So yeah, it's basically bobble but with gas. So this is basically the other side of CD games in the early 90s. No fancy animations, no nice extra music from the CD, just a normal game that would have run perfectly well on your Amiga 500, just burnt to a CD. Okay. And lastly, the most notorious of them all. Rise of the Robots. It had to be Rise of the Robots. This is a lovely box. Say what you will about the game, the box is very nice. And yeah, I did know this wasn't actually that great at the time. Electronics Boutique were selling them off, and as we can see from the sticker that I very helpfully peeled off the front and stuck in the side, this was originally 35 quid, but was reduced down. It says $14.99, might have even been cheaper than that. Hang on. The game's not in the box. We know what Rise of the Robot looks like. If you don't, look it up online. A famously, infamously terrible game, which did have a sequel. I didn't realise there was a sequel to this, which was just called Rise 2. And apparently it's even worse than this. But this had a lot of aspirations and a lot of money put behind it, as you can see from the packaging, but was not that great. It was supposed to be a one-on-one robot fighting game, it sounds great. I mean, screenshots look lovely. But yeah, intro music by Brian May. Music by Brian May there. Yes, all of about 5 to 10 seconds of it. So there we have it. The Amiga CD32. Does mine work? Yes, it does. It works very well. Thank you very much. And what did I think of it at the time? I must admit, it didn't get as much love as the CDTV. Being all games rather than the games and reference material, entertainment, education mix that the CDTV went for, that DVD before the DVD was a thing CDTV did. This didn't really have the wide appeal that the CDTV did. So it was only me who would be interested in games like that, none of the rest of the family, with mostly just arcade games and the like. It didn't really have the appeal, the more widespread appeal that the library that CDTV had. And so, yeah, it didn't get to live downstairs by the main TV, and yes, this didn't get as much love. Even CD32 games like this played them on the CDTV downstairs on the big TV with everybody else helping out. So yeah, I'm very glad this is still working. I'm glad I picked up my CD32 for only £100 at the time. And it's an interesting piece of history. It's a nice looking machine. Looks a little like an Amiga 500 crossed with a Mega Drive. It's a shame it wasn't the big hit Commodore was hoping for, but unfortunately with the resources Commodore had behind them, it was really never going to be. All you were really going to get would be ports from Amiga games and maybe the odd PC CD title ported over. And even though it's 32-bit, it would soon get completely eclipsed by the likes of the Saturn and the PlayStation that were on the horizon. The 90s were heading towards a 3D polygon future that this hardware just was not capable of pushing. There you go. Did you have a CD32 back in the day, or are you a collector? Have you picked up one of these more recently, just out of curiosity? What are your thoughts about Amigas and CDs? Like I said, I am more fond of the old CDTV than the CD32, but it's a nice little interesting thing, and I'm very much glad it still works. But what were your experiences? Let us know in the comments. If you'd like to see more from us, why not subscribe? If you've enjoyed this, please give it a like, because it really does help the channel. And if you do subscribe, maybe we'll see you again soon. I've been Jeff. This has been my CD32, which did not explode. And this was the Mammoth Tech Show. And you've been very kind to watch. Thank you very much.